Thanks for coming tonight. And
Thank you.
yeah, some nice music to start us off. I want to welcome anyone who might be watching us via video stream as well. There's some folks out there who probably be watching us now and maybe later. So this is, of course, our Sensing the Sacred service, Sundays at 5. And we'll spend some time in silence and then also have the opportunity to reflect on a passage from a well-known contemplative, Thomas Merton. But to start us off, let's go ahead and read our opening reading. We gather together. We gather together. We gather together to remember who we truly are, to recall our most fundamental selves found at the very depth of existence. We gather together. We gather together to be reminded that we are born of love, and that love, known by many names and nameless, is our source, our path, and our destiny. We gather together. We gather together to connect with love, being present with it in silence, being present in the words and images that bubble up in our hearts and minds. We gather together. We gather together to join the saints and sages across time who have embodied love by turning themselves over to it and being of service to the world. We gather together. Part of gathering together, especially in a setting like this, is to offer prayers and concerns that might be on our hearts, things that might be weighing us down, or things that we might want to celebrate with each other. So I want to give everyone the opportunity to share out loud anything they would like to express, Thanksgiving, concerns, what have you. We might also do that by lighting a candle. If you want to do that as part of the prayer, you're welcome to do that as well. So we'll begin this time of shared prayer. There we go. So I want to offer a prayer for victims of gun violence, families who have to deal with gun violence, the ramifications of that. And then also just a prayer for our country as we navigate this issue and try to resolve it.
I'd like to offer a prayer for my family, my mother, her friend Ed, my sister and brother, as they navigate difficult times, and keep them in comfort and safety.
And I want to pray for my dear friend Katie, who has been moved once against her will. Her daughter has placed her into a dementia wing of an assisted living place, and she didn't want to go. And I also have not gone out to see her, so I want to pray for me that I go and see her and reminisce some of our good times and see if we can't just have some joyful moments.
We ask for blessings upon this gathering and for those named and those unnamed, trusting that our prayers, whether spoken or unspoken, are received and heard. So I invite you to find a seated position for our period of centering prayer. Whatever particular, I guess we're all sitting in chairs, so that's the position. Sometimes people will sit on the floor, though, or even lay on the floor, which you're welcome to try if you want to do that. So for the next 20 minutes, we'll just share silence together. And if you want to follow the instructions that are common to the centering prayer tradition, you can choose a word, a sacred word, as an anchor that you would use to come back to if you feel that your mind has wandered during that 20-minute period. But you're welcome to use or practice any particular meditation or centering or praying technique that you choose during this time. If you do want to use the centering prayer approach, that word, that sacred word, should just be a simple word that reflects the divine for you. It can be something as simple as God or holy or yes. And it's not a mantra, so what happens is if you're sitting and you realize, oh, you're not present anymore, you would just repeat that word a few times as a way to affirm your willingness to be present to the holy. Now, I will say that I often suggest people use the body as an anchor, so once you say that word, you can then come back to the breath, just noticing the breath in and out of your body through your nose, or just maybe the contact points of your body on the chair or your feet on the floor. So that'll give you a little more grounding. In any case, without further ado, I'm going to ring the bell 3 times, and I'll bring it once to end, and then we'll begin a short period of lectio divina. Feel free to take a minute or so to come out of your prayer, your meditation time, and if you so choose, dedicate it to someone or some cause or some situation that is dear to your heart. I'm now going to read this passage by Thomas Merton, and I invite you to listen deeply, listen with what the mystics call the ear of the heart, and see how it speaks to you. I'll read it 3 times, and then after the 3rd reading, I'll invite you to share what has come up for you. And there isn't a right or wrong answer as far as what comes up. There might be a particular word or passage that particularly pops for you, or there might be something that seems tangentially related that pops up. Whatever arises is fine. Thomas Merton writes, "Do not look for rest in any pleasure, because you were not created for pleasure. You were created for spiritual joy. And if you do not know the difference between pleasure and spiritual joy, you have not yet begun to live." Did not look for rest in any pleasure, because you were not created for pleasure. You were created for spiritual joy. And if you do not know the difference between pleasure and spiritual joy, you have not yet begun to live. Do not look for rest in any pleasure, because you were not created for pleasure. You were created for spiritual joy. And if you do not know the difference between pleasure and spiritual joy, you have not yet begun to live. Please feel free to share a word or a phrase or whatever this might evoke for you.
This is interesting, reading it a few times, because the first time allowed my judgmental mind to object to the way things were phrased. And so then that could be out of the way and done. To then allow the listening with the heart and what was meant. So I kind of love that opportunity to kind of let that part pass. But then I think the message, what it brought to my mind was the contrast of pleasure and spiritual joy. And I think about newspaper titles that grab you, and YouTube clickbait titles, and go listen to this and get all excited about this, and it's sort of like this pleasure angst kind of a thing, and then putting all of that aside, and then you're out in nature and you're really feeling the world, and you're really feeling what's real, and you're with somebody you love, and you're listening to them and feeling them. And so that was sort of what came to mind with the contrasting pieces of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I had a similar response, very much so. The word that really popped out, or the phrase that really popped out for me, was the last few words. Not, you have not yet begun to live. Or even just the word live popped out for me the first time I read it. But very much like this fast food sort of grab something to pleasure ourselves rather than really have a deeper pleasure or a deeper joy. And how that's really... This was written this was written decades ago, before all of this stuff that we're dealing with now, instant this, instant that, even came about. And so I find it challenging, I find it challenging to not reach for pleasure. And it's not that I think pleasure is wrong, but I guess to put it in his terms, at the expense of joy, it's not healthy at the expense of joy. So, there's I think he's pointing to a lack of depth. Like if you're always just grabbing for stuff that's glittery, right, then you're never really maybe going quite deep enough to experiencing true joy. I don't know. That's what comes up for me, and then I recognize how I am that way quite often, and there's sadness around that, some sadness around that.
First reading, my mind was just repeating that. Don't rest looking for pleasure. Don't rest looking for pleasure, because you won't find it. And And that's probably a basic truth. And then it moved toward the second reading. I really ended on spiritual joy, because I think that I have to really claim that I like. I'm surprised by the ordinary, and my thinking mind categorized that as joy. I'm just surprised, so just let it be. And whatever comes up, it just comes up. And sometimes it's the funniest thing. I mean, you never really know when those things are going to pop up. Sometimes, I try to, and I do meditate at least once a day, sometimes twice. And, I've got the monkey mind going a lot. But I always bring myself back, and that gives me rest. And it clears away things so that I can approach the day. It seems to me with more openness. And sometimes there's a lot of funny things that people say. I mean, I think that there's a lot of comedy out in the world. So I do want to say that I did, a long time ago, a couple decades ago, I did some spiritual direction out of the Cenacle. I don't know if you remember what the Cenacle was. Oh, it was out in Izetta, and it was a retreat center that the Cenacle sisters ran, and it was mostly for retreats, and they were more really they were not really recognized by the Catholic Church because they were so avant-garde, according to them. So, and they would invite James Finley to come to a couple of retreats, and James Finley was an acolyte of Thomas Merton.
That's right, yeah.
And I really didn't know at that time who Thomas Merton was, but we did a lot of, and it was like a weekend-long retreat, I think. We did long sits, and he sat on a Zaffu cushion, and it was quiet. And then I read about Thomas Merton, and read a lot of things that he did, and I thought, my gosh, I was in the presence with him. Yeah, that was the divine. But he never really said that too much, other than he had worked, he had been an acolyte in the Trappist monk, where you don't even talk, so it was a quiet, a silent retreat, is what it was. At my age, I'm getting a little bit better to just live and let it be, and see what comes up. But it doesn't mean that I don't like good food. I don't like nice clothes, even though I don't buy any anymore. And I love music. But I don't rush after it. But maybe I do. I don't know. I got through tickets with a friend a few times, So we stood in the rush line, by the way, to get cheaper tickets. But that's joyful to me, that. So thank you for reading that.
Yeah.
He had such an interesting life himself. Talk about pursuing pleasure.
Yeah, prior to becoming a monk, right? He lived it up. To your point, I will say that there are things that, there have been times in my life where, there could be, let's just say, a movie, right? That I can watch and really appreciate and really love because of perhaps the acting or the writing is good or something like that, right? Actually, I'm going to stop. I'm going to come from another angle. There are times where I've engaged media, for example, and it's felt very healthy. It's felt like it's a whole, right? A more holistic approach. I don't know if that's a way to say it, but I think like I can approach the same thing either grasping or open-handed, right? And my experience would be very different. And I think the grasping is maybe the pleasure he's talking about, right? Don't rest in that grasping. Don't rest in trying to find things to fill you up. But then if you just receive something open-handed, I could receive the same thing open-handed, and it feels very different, right? I'm just appreciating it for what it is. It might be the acting, like I said, in a movie, or it might be the way a particular song is produced, the production values, right? So I don't know. I think for me, I'm thinking like that dividing line between pleasure, as he defines it, pleasure, and spiritual joy is an attitude. You know, it's an attitude of like, am I wanting this for, is it a grasping or is it a receiving? I don't know if that makes any sense.
It's not the thing, it's what's happening inside.
It's right. It's an interior sort of posture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is just happening, and I didn't make it happen. It's like for me, it's this is.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Like it tickled me when I looked up and saw that Mayflower church up there.
Oh.
I mean, the Mayflower, the ship, where
Yeah.
all the congregations came over. I don't know why I didn't expect to see her, but it didn't throw me off my rails or anything. But I've never seen the ship before. It's usually my back is, the stained glass windows are on my back.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to watch the Tony Awards tonight because I just love, the Tony Awards are going to be on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's something you can enjoy.
Oh, absolutely.
Enjoy it openly, right?
Absolutely.
I just have to mention one thing, when you were talking about the joy in the little things,
Mhm.
and you mentioned earlier a friend you have with Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
My mother has Alzheimer's, and I'll be driving with her in the car. She's, look, there's an airplane! And she's so excited. Because an airplane.
An airplane, cute.
She's so excited because she sees an airplane in the sky. It's
She's
just like
right
a
in the
child.
moment.
And, yeah. And she's so much joy.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
so beautiful.
Yeah.
I think that's so neat.
Yeah.
Right.
It's lovely riding with her because she, in the time she gets so, this has changed so much, and look at that building, and oh my goodness. She's just so engaged.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow.
That's lovely.
And it's all new to her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's all new.
Right. Well, I've heard from other friends who visited Katie that she's very, very depressed. It sounds to me, you know, she doesn't want to be there, and they took her car away. Her daughters took her car away from her, and she's just angry, and so I'm prepared for that, and I'm going to bring some pictures to see if she remembers us in some of these pictures. But that's I think that's why I'm reticent about going out there. I wish she would do that. Say those.
Thank you for sharing your experiences.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for planning this and
Sure.
finding the readings and everything.
Let's close out by reciting this prayer here. We'll do it together. Ground of all being, Mother of life, Father of the universe, your name is sacred beyond speaking. May we know your presence. May your longings be our longings in heart and action. May there be food for the human family today and for the whole earth community. Forgive us the falseness of what we have done, as we forgive those who are untrue to us. Do not forsake us in our time of conflict, but lead us to new beginnings, for the light of life, the vitality of life, and the glory of life are yours now and forever. Amen. And may we experience that vitality and glory in the days ahead.
Can we have this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I love the way you
Feel free to take it.
Lord's Prayer.